Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about something that is going to make you so much faster over every distance of running. We're talking about increasing your stride length. So welcome back to the channel everybody. My name is Ben Parks, 225 marathoner, coach and ultra runner as well. So when I ran my 225 marathon in Valencia last year, in all of the training I was working so hard on improving my stride length. What I mean by stride length is the amount of distance that I can travel down the road per stride. It tends to be the distance between where one foot lands and where the next foot lands. That is your stride length. And the further, so the more we can increase that, the further we can travel down the road per stride, the quicker we're going to be over that distance. So yeah, that's what I've been working on really hard, and here are all my tips and things and tricks and things to help you out increasing yours. So let's start with why. Why do we want to be working on this and what difference is it going to make? Well, for our speed, it is really determined by two different factors. Our cadence, which is that turnover of our legs, and most people should be aiming for around about 180 steps a minute. But then once we go once that builds up, it gets to a point where we can't increase our cadence anymore. We'll be like that road runner turning over far too fast. So then we need to be working on our stride length and increasing that stride length for the amount of distance we can travel down the road per stride. And also it's really important to point out here that this is something that takes a long time to sort out. It's not something we can go out and just fix like that and flick a switch and it's just going to be fine. This is a long-term solution that will take a few months to change how we're moving and how we're flowing over the road. We want to really make sure that we're not overstriding, reaching that leg out too far in front of us. We still want to be making sure that leg and our foot is landing nicely under our center of mass. So what we're going to talk a little bit more today about is all those things we can do to improve our hip strength, improve our mobility, improve that range of motion that we have out there, and we'll move on to those now to improve your stride length. So the first thing we're going to talk about, which is number 1 of 5 things we've got coming up, is going to be strides. Now you might have heard of strides before. They're one of the single best things you can do to improve all sorts of running, including your stride length. So what I mean by strides is very short, normally around about 100 to 150 meters of distance of really fast running, up around about that 90-95% effort. Now you tend to do these after your easy runs. So you've been out for maybe whatever it is easy for you, 30, 45 minutes, something like that, and then put these in after your runs. If you're new to strides, maybe put in 4 times 100 meters, or a bit more advanced, up to 6 or even 8 times 100 meters, and give yourself about 60 seconds rest between each one. These are really going to help improve your form. It's really going to get you firing through nicely there. And yeah, it's going to really improve your stride length as well. So the second thing we're going to be talking about is a hip flexor stretch. So this is really important to be building in your routine. So many of us today in modern life are stuck behind desks, we're in cars, and we tend to be in this crouched over position here, which really shortens our hip flexors in this part of our hips. So yeah, strengthening that out and stretching that out and opening our chest as well really helps improve that stride length. So I've got a little stretch here. So this is the position we should be getting ourselves into. Knee nicely on the floor there. And obviously, yeah, we're here working on this area here, working on our hip flexors and that hip mobility. So yeah, get yourself in a nice position, nice level hips as well. And then we're just slowly rocking backwards and forwards like this, backwards and forwards. This is more of a dynamic stretch. We're not holding this down here. It's just gently backwards and forwards. And then once you've got the idea of that, and then we can add in some arm movements as well. So there's 3 different types you can add in here. Our arm going across like this, and have your head following your hand round as you almost like pulsing backwards and forwards. That's a really good one. And then also you can have the same hand, your right hand, with your left knee going forward, going up, and again pulsing backwards and forwards. Should be feeling a nice stretch across your hips here. And then also you can have, again, your right hand, if your left knee's going forward, going up over the top, pulsing backwards and forwards. So in terms of number of repetitions, we want to be talking around about 8 to 10 sort of pulses as such on each side. And I mean 8 to 10 of each hand movement. So we're probably talking around about 30 in total on each side before changing round. And that move on to number 3. We're going to be talking about downhill repeats. Now I'm sure you might have seen my last video on hill repeats. This is sort of fairly similar, but we want to find somewhere a little bit sort of flatter, around about that sort of 2 or 3% decline in a hill, and yeah, sort of nice and slowly up the hill. Then we're going to be going down at a nice, fast but controlled pace. So why this is so good is that when we're running sort of down a hill like that, we're naturally going to be running at an increased stride length. So it's just getting our body used to what that feels like. So when we're down sort of running on the flat, you know, we're trying to sort of replicate that feeling when we're on the flat. The gravity and things as we're going down the hill will really help sort of increase that stride length as we're going down. So yeah, it's just about getting our body used to how that feels like. So moving on to number 4, we're going to be talking about sort of 2 things that I like to do before every run I go on. One being opening the gate and one being closing the gate. These are 2 sort of dynamic stretches that you can build into, yeah, before every run that you go on. Doesn't take long. So yeah, what I mean by that is we're going to talk about opening the gate first. So it is when you sort of drive your knee up and then around and back down again, drive your knee up, around and back down again, and just sort of keep doing that. You can sort of have a few little jogs on the spot like that just to get everything nicely warmed up, and yeah, sort of really helps open up the hips ready before we go on our run. And also closing the gate, sort of very similar, but it goes kind of the other way. So around, back, and then back down, up, around and back down, up, around and back down. And yeah, just sort of keep doing that around about sort of 30-45 seconds before every run you go on. It just helps get those hips nicely opened up. And finally, moving on to number 5, we're going to be talking about yoga. Now this is something I've introduced into my routine relatively recently, but I found it has helped so much. So what I really recommend is, if you're beginner, sort of more beginner to this, look up some of Adrienne's yoga videos. I'll link to her channel down below, and check out some of her beginner sort of runner yoga for beginners videos that I think are really good. And I started out in this way, and it really helped yeah, sort of improve that sort of mobility around my hips, and some of the poses and things she gets into can really help your running. I then stepped it up a gear, and I now sort of regularly attend classes 2 or 3 times a week. And yeah, sort of my sort of range of motion and my hip flexibility has improved massively since going along. So there we have it, guys. They're my 5 top tips for increasing your stride length. These are all sort of really good things to incorporate your running, not necessarily just for stride length, but for that overall improving your running, getting a little bit faster and sort of being more engaged into the whole running process. So give it a go. Let me know down in the comments, have you tried any of these? Are you going to be building them into your routine? And if you've got any other sort of questions and things you want, any future video topics, of course, let me know down there as well. Thank you so much for your support. Everyone that's been out there sort of buying hats. Actually, this is my one of my old original hats, but people that have been buying new hats, I really appreciate it. We're going to be shipping those orders out. And we've got some buffs on there, so check those out. If you want to get some new gear to support the channel, it's most appreciated. And as always, guys, just thank you a million times over. Let me know how your running going. Let me know how your running is going. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.